But this is me. For 30 years, I did this for a living. So I see this happen. They took care of Colbert. That was rude. That was inexcusable. The man deserves a great deal of credit. He's in the Hall of Fame 9 times.
According to Letterman himself, there were a handful of famous guests who crossed a line so hard, he couldn't stand them at all. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, just completely wrong for his stage. He later described some of these encounters as deeply unsettling, moments where guests talked over him, hijacked the rhythm, and treated the show like it wasn't his anymore. So was it just bad chemistry, or did these guests hit something much deeper than bruised egos? Stay locked in, because the truth behind these moments is stranger than people realize. Number 1, Oprah Winfrey, the guest who made Letterman feel invisible. This one shocked even people who thought they knew Letterman inside and out. When Oprah Winfrey booked her appearance, her team arrived hours early and immediately set strict boundaries. Crew members were told to keep interaction to a minimum. No casual chatter, no initiating conversation, no direct eye contact unless Oprah spoke first. That alone froze the room. Letterman only learned about these rules minutes before rehearsal, and it rubbed him the wrong way instantly. Not because he needed special treatment, but because the rules quietly stripped him of authority on his own set. On camera, the interview looked polite, even friendly, but something underneath felt stiff, and Dave knew it. He tossed out playful jokes, trying to regain balance. Oprah calmly redirected the tone every time. When Letterman teased, "You're used to being in charge, aren't you?" she smiled briefly and replied, "I'm used to being prepared." That moment landed heavy. Oprah leaned forward, steady and composed, and the power shift was unmistakable. This wasn't banter anymore. It was control. Dave wasn't steering the moment. He was reacting to it. And for a host who built his entire legacy on rhythm and timing, that cut deep. Backstage, the mood cooled fast. A longtime producer later recalled Letterman saying flatly, "That didn't feel like my show." Years later, Dave finally put words to what happened. "I don't think she liked me," he admitted, a rare emotional statement from someone who usually framed conflict with humor instead of honesty. The issue wasn't jokes. It wasn't ego. It was authority. Oprah didn't play along. She didn't bend to the rhythm of the room, and Letterman felt pushed out of the center of his own stage. That feeling stuck with him far longer than the audience ever realized. They famously reconciled on television decades later, smiling, shaking hands, and exchanging warm words. Oprah called it closure. Letterman nodded along, but behind the scenes, the dynamic never returned to what it once was. After that appearance, Oprah was never booked the same way again. No loose segments, no risky humor, no extended back and forth. Everything was controlled, clean, and cautious. Dave didn't fight her, he didn't badmouth her, he adjusted quietly and moved on. That quiet adjustment said more than any argument ever could. Because for Letterman, the show wasn't just a job, it was his space, his rhythm, his trust with the audience. And once that trust felt challenged, the door didn't slam. It simply closed. What made this moment linger wasn't conflict, it was contrast. Oprah represented a different kind of power, one built on preparation, control, and authority that didn't need jokes to dominate a room. Letterman represented chaos, timing, and improvisation. Those two energies didn't collide, they canceled each other out. And from that point forward, Dave became far more aware of how fame could walk into his studio and quietly rewrite the rules without saying a word. That realization would shape how he handled guests for years to come. Because once you felt invisible on your own stage, you never forget it. And Oprah wasn't the only guest who taught him that lesson. But behind the scenes, things changed. She was never booked the same way again. No risky bits, no loose moments. Letterman didn't fight it. He adjusted quietly and moved on. Number 2. Crispin Glover, the guest who turned the stage into chaos. This entry landed high on Letterman's private list for one simple reason. The show stopped feeling safe. When Crispin Glover appeared in 1987, wearing platform shoes and moving stiffly with strange pauses, the audience laughed, assuming it was an act. Letterman tried to ground the interview, asking simple questions, but Glover wouldn't stay seated, and that's when things started sliding fast. He kept rising, shifting, stepping closer, then backing away, moving too fast to track. Without warning, Crispin Glover lifted his leg and kicked upward, missing David Letterman's head by inches. Dave flinched hard and snapped, "What are you doing?" The studio locked up instantly. Laughter vanished. During the break, security rushed in and escorted Glover off the stage. According to a former stage manager, concerns had already been raised before the cameras even rolled. Glover was pacing backstage, throwing mock kicks, ignoring staff, and refusing to engage normally. "We thought he was committing to a bit," the manager later explained. "We didn't realize how far he'd take it." When the show resumed, the energy was completely different. Letterman stayed professional, but the rest of the taping felt stiff and mechanical. Backstage, Dave reportedly said flatly, "That's it. He's never coming back." And he didn't. Glover was permanently banned. No follow-up, no second chances. The incident forced late-night television to rethink guest screening and physical staging. From that moment on, unpredictability stopped being charming once it crossed into personal risk. Glover changed something fundamental. He made Letterman think about safety on his own stage. That line never reopened. Number 3, Madonna, the icon who came to hijack the show. When Letterman reflected on guests who pushed him past irritation into real anger, Madonna always landed high on the list. During her 1994 appearance, she arrived already confrontational. She complained about the dressing room. She criticized the lighting. She argued over makeup. Producer Rob Burnett later said it felt deliberate. It was like she was warming up, he recalled. Nothing felt accidental. Every small issue turned into friction. Once the cameras went live, the shift was immediate. Madonna swore repeatedly, ignored Dave's cues, and refused to leave her chair when the segment was clearly ending. Letterman tried humor to regain control, laughing, "You're going to get us in serious trouble." Madonna didn't miss a beat. She smiled and replied, "So what?" The audience laughed, but the room tightened. Dave leaned forward, then back. His timing slipped. The show continued, but control was gone. What sealed it happened off camera. During commercial breaks, Madonna reportedly became calm and cooperative. The moment the red light came back on, the disruption resumed. A longtime staffer later put it bluntly, she knew exactly when she was being watched. After the taping, Letterman didn't hide his frustration. Rob recalled him saying, "That was planned. She came here to hijack the show." For Dave, chaos could be funny, but using his platform to manufacture controversy and leave his crew exposed crossed a line. They crossed paths again years later, but the tension never fully disappeared. "She used it," one staffer said, and Dave never forgot. Number 4, Joaquin Phoenix, the guest who used empathy against him. So why did Joaquin Phoenix land next on the list? Because he made Letterman feel personally crossed. It started the moment Phoenix sat down in 2009. Long beard, sunglasses indoors, slow, disconnected answers. Something felt wrong, and Letterman sensed it immediately. Instead of pushing jokes, Dave did something rare. He softened his tone. He leaned in. He tried to help the conversation survive. Viewers could feel it. This wasn't comedy. It was concern. At one point, Letterman asked quietly, "What's happening with you?" And that's where things took a turn no one expected. Joaquin Phoenix stared down at the desk and muttered something barely understandable. The studio fell silent. Off camera, David Letterman believed something serious was happening. One staff member later said, "Dave thought this was real. He thought Joaquin was struggling and needed protection." That belief is what made everything fall apart. Months later, the truth came out. The entire appearance had been staged as part of the mockumentary I'm Still Here. Phoenix wasn't unraveling. He was acting, and Letterman had no idea. When Dave found out, the anger wasn't loud. It was sharp and deeply personal. Longtime producer Barbara Gaines later explained it clearly. He felt exposed, like someone used his genuine concern as a prop. Phoenix eventually returned to the show to address it directly. Sitting across from Dave, he said plainly, "I hope I didn't offend you." Letterman replied without hesitation, "You did." That short exchange said everything. Letterman became far more guarded with guests who presented themselves as fragile or unstable. For him, that night wasn't about a bad interview. It was about realizing that even honesty could be staged. That lesson stayed with him long after the applause faded. Number 5. Paris Hilton, the guest Letterman shut out for good. At the bottom of Letterman's most disliked guest list sat the one person he felt wasted his time more than anyone else, Paris Hilton. Before her 2007 appearance, her team sent over a list of off-limit topics. According to people in the production office, the message was crystal clear: promote the perfume, avoid legal trouble, keep it light. Letterman looked at the list, nodded, and waited. Once the cameras rolled, he ignored it completely. He casually joked about Paris's recent jail sentence. She smiled tightly. The next question landed, and she shut down. Short answers, long pauses, eyes drifting away. Dave tried to ease the moment, saying, "You've been through a lot lately." Paris shrugged and replied, "I don't really want to talk about that." Letterman paused, then calmly pushed once more. The shutdown was total. Backstage, Dave felt misled. He believed she wanted publicity without conversation, and that bothered him more than any openly rude guest ever had. After the taping, he told his staff bluntly, "If you don't want to talk about your life, don't come on my show." That line summed up his philosophy perfectly. Letterman believed a talk show was a trade, access in exchange for honesty. Paris wanted the platform without vulnerability. That's why she never returned. No public feud, no dramatic fallout. She simply moved on to media spaces where control came easier. Letterman quietly closed the door, and for him, nothing felt more disrespectful than sitting in the chair and refusing to truly be there. But what made the Paris Hilton moment different wasn't anger. It was finality. Unlike other guests who annoyed him, confused him, or even embarrassed him, Paris triggered something deeper. To Letterman, the interview felt hollow. The chair was filled, but the presence wasn't there. And that cut straight to the heart of what Dave believed late-night television was supposed to be. For Letterman, the desk wasn't a billboard. It wasn't a commercial stop. It was a conversation space. You showed up ready to engage, ready to react, ready to reveal something real, even if it was uncomfortable. Paris didn't break rules. She followed her team's plan perfectly. And that was the problem. From Dave's perspective, the interview became a transaction without trust. He gave her the platform. She gave him nothing back. That imbalance lingered with him. Staffers later said Letterman wasn't loud about it. He didn't rant. He didn't storm around backstage. He simply made a decision. And once Dave made those, they were rarely reversed. And that decision quietly reshaped how guests were booked moving forward. After Paris, producers became far more cautious about celebrity restrictions. If a guest arrived with too many conditions, too many boundaries, or too many rehearsed talking points, Alarms went off. Letterman didn't want perfect. He wanted present. That shift didn't just affect guests. It affected the entire tone of the show. Over time, Letterman leaned harder into authenticity. Fewer glossy appearances, more raw conversations, more moments where things could go wrong, but felt honest when they didn't. It's why his later interviews became slower, deeper, and less joke-driven. He wasn't chasing laughs anymore, he was chasing truth. And that evolution traces straight back to moments like Paris Hilton, Joaquin Phoenix, Madonna, and Crispin Glover. Each guest taught him something different, but Paris taught him what absence felt like. She showed him what it looked like when someone sat in the chair physically, but refused to sit in it emotionally, and that was unforgivable. David Letterman didn't build his legacy by pretending everyone was easy to work with. He built it by reacting honestly when things went sideways. Some guests crossed lines, not loudly, not aggressively, but quietly. And those quiet moments caused the deepest damage. They changed how he trusted, how he listened, how he protected his stage. By the time Letterman stepped away from late night, he wasn't just a comedian behind a desk. He was a gatekeeper of conversation, someone who understood how easily authenticity could be manipulated, and how hard it was to get back once it was gone. That's why these interviews still matter today, because they weren't just awkward television moments, they were turning points. They revealed how power shifts in a room, how fame can bend rules without saying a word, and how even the most confident host can be left questioning control on his own stage. And maybe that's the real reason these moments stuck with Letterman so deeply. Not because guests embarrassed him, but because they showed him how fragile trust really is under studio lights. Now it's your turn. Which of these guests crossed the line the worst? And who do you think David Letterman never truly forgave? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if these stories surprised you, and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes Hollywood truths you were never supposed to hear.
Late Show, David Letterman always welcomed the biggest names in Hollywood. He joked with them, teased them, and made the audience laugh along with him. But behind that familiar smile was a very different truth. There were 9 famous guests Dave genuinely couldn't stand, so extreme he later called them evil. They talked over him, overpowered him, and treated his stage like it didn't belong to him anymore. So was it just bad chemistry, or did they strike something far deeper than his patience? Stay with us, because the truth behind these encounters might surprise you. Number 1. Oprah Winfrey, the queen who made Letterman feel invisible. Let's start at the very top. The one name that shocked even people who thought they knew David Letterman inside out, Oprah Winfrey. And here's the part most fans never heard. During the Late Show, Oprah's team arrived hours early and immediately laid down rules. Crew were told interaction should be kept minimal. They were instructed not to initiate conversation and to avoid direct eye contact unless Oprah spoke first. That order alone stunned the room. David Letterman just found out minutes before rehearsal, and he hated it. On camera, the interview looked polite, almost friendly. But it wasn't working, and Dave knew it. He tossed out playful jabs. She calmly redirected. At one point, when Letterman joked, "You're used to being in charge, aren't you?" Oprah smiled briefly and replied, "I'm used to being prepared." Oprah leaned forward, steady, controlled. In that single exchange, the power shift was clear. It wasn't banter anymore. It was a reminder of who believed they held authority and who refused to play along. Backstage, the mood hardened. One longtime producer recalled that after the taping, Letterman said flatly, "That didn't feel like my show." Years later, Letterman finally put words to what happened. In a rare, candid moment, he admitted, "There was a distance there. I don't think she liked me." That line matters because Dave almost never framed conflict emotionally. This time, he did. The issue was authority. Oprah challenged his jokes. She removed him from the center of the room. And that was unforgivable. They famously reconciled on television decades later, shaking hands and smiling for the cameras. Oprah called it closure. Letterman nodded along. But behind the scenes, Oprah was never booked again the same way. No playful bits, no risks. Dave didn't fight her. He adjusted and quietly moved her out of his world. Number 2, Crispin Glover, the guest who turned Letterman's stage into a danger zone. This is the guest David Letterman ranked the second on his private list for a far simpler reason. He made the show stop feeling safe, and that guest was Crispin Glover. To him, the trouble began seconds after he sat down. Glover appeared on The Late Show in 1987 wearing platform shoes and a wig, moving stiffly, speaking in an odd rhythm. The audience laughed, assuming it was character work. Letterman went with it at first, asking simple questions, trying to ground the conversation. But Glover wouldn't stay seated. He kept rising, shifting, stepping closer. Then he stood again, too fast. Without warning, Glover kicked his leg upward, missing Letterman's head by inches. Dave flinched hard and snapped, "What are you doing?" The studio froze. The laughter died instantly. During the break, security rushed in and removed Glover from the stage. According to a former stage manager, Glover had already raised concerns before going live. He was pacing backstage, throwing mock kicks, refusing to respond normally to staff. "We thought he was committing to a bit," the manager said later. "We didn't realize how far he'd take it." When the show resumed, the atmosphere had changed completely. Letterman stayed composed, but the rest of the taping felt mechanical. Backstage, Letterman said, "That's it. He's never coming back." And he didn't. Glover was permanently banned. No follow-up appearance. The incident pushed late-night shows to rethink guest screening and physical staging. From that night forward, unpredictability stopped being charming when it crossed into physical risk. Crispin Glover did something different. He forced Letterman to think about personal safety on his own stage, and that crossed a line that never reopened. Number 3, Madonna, the icon who came to hijack Letterman's show. When David Letterman looked back on guests who pushed him past irritation into real anger, Madonna always landed the third position. In Late Show in 1994, Madonna arrived already combative. She complained about the dressing room. She criticized the lighting. She argued over makeup. Rob Burnett, one of producer, later said, "It felt like she was warming up for something." Nothing seemed accidental. Every small issue turned into friction. Once the cameras were live, the shift was immediate. Madonna swore repeatedly, ignored Dave's cues, and refused to leave her chair when the segment was clearly ending. Letterman tried humor to pull things back. He laughed and warned, "You're going to get us in serious trouble." Madonna didn't hesitate. She smiled and answered, "So what?" That exchange hit a nerve. The audience laughed, but the room tightened. Dave leaned forward, then back. His timing slipped. The show kept moving, but the control was gone. What sealed it happened off camera. During commercial breaks, Madonna reportedly became relaxed and cooperative. When the red light returned, the disruption resumed instantly. A longtime staffer later described it simply. She knew when she was being watched. After the taping, Letterman didn't mask his frustration. Rob recalled him saying, "That was planned. She came here to hijack the show." For Dave, unpredictability was part of comedy. He believed Madonna used his platform to manufacture controversy and leave his crew exposed. That crossed a line. They crossed paths again years later, but the atmosphere stayed cold. She used it, and that's why Dave never fully let it go. Number 4, Joaquin Phoenix, the actor who used Letterman's empathy against him. Why did Joaquin Phoenix put on the fourth of the list? The answer is that he made David Letterman feel personally crossed on his own show, and it all started the moment Phoenix sat down in 2009. He looked rough, long beard, sunglasses indoors, slow answers that barely connected. Letterman did something unusual. He backed off. He leaned in, softened his voice, and tried to help the conversation survive. Viewers could feel it. Dave was managing concern. One moment, Letterman asked, "What's happening with you?" Phoenix stared down and muttered something unclear. The studio went quiet. Behind the scenes, Dave believed Phoenix was genuinely struggling. One staff member recalled, "He thought this was real. He thought he needed to protect him." That belief is what turned everything sour. Months later, it came out that the entire appearance was staged, part of the mockumentary I'm Still Here. Phoenix wasn't unraveling. He was acting. Letterman wasn't in on it. When Dave found out, the anger wasn't loud. It was sharp and personal. Barbara Gaines, a longtime producer of The Late Show, described it. He felt exposed, like someone used his concern as a prop. Phoenix eventually returned to the show to clean it up. Sitting across from Dave, he said directly, "I hope I didn't offend you." Letterman replied calmly, "You did." That exchange said everything. Dave accepted the apology on air, but the tone never fully reset. Letterman became far more guarded with guests who presented themselves as fragile or unstable. Because for Letterman, that night wasn't about a bad interview. It was about realizing that even honesty could be staged, and that lesson stayed with him long after the applause faded. Number 5, Paris Hilton, the heiress Letterman, shut out for good. At the bottom of David Letterman's most hated list sits the one guest he felt wasted his time more than anyone else, Paris Hilton. It started with conditions. Before Paris appeared on The Late Show in 2007, her team sent over a list of off-limit topics. According to people in the production office, the message was clear. Promote the perfume, avoid the jail time, keep everything light. Letterman saw the list, nodded, and moved on. He did what he always did, waited for the camera to roll. Then he ignored it. On air, Letterman brought up Paris's recent jail sentence with a dry joke. Paris smiled tightly. The next question landed and she froze. Short answers, long pauses, eyes darting away from Dave. Letterman tried to loosen things up and said, "You've been through a lot lately." Paris shrugged and replied, "I don't really want to talk about that." Dave paused, then pushed once more. Calmly, evenly. The shutdown was complete. Backstage, Letterman felt misled. He thought she wanted publicity without conversation, he said. That bothered him more than any rude guest ever had. After the taping, Letterman was blunt with his staff. "If you don't want to talk about your life, don't come on my show." That line mattered because it summed up his philosophy. Letterman believed a talk show was a trade. Paris wanted the platform without the vulnerability. That was why she never returned. There was no public feud, no follow-up interview years later to smooth things over. Paris moved on to other media spaces where control came easier. Letterman closed the door quietly. And for David Letterman, nothing felt more disrespectful than showing up, sitting in the chair, and refusing to actually be there. David Letterman didn't build his legacy by pretending everyone was easy to work with. Some guests crossed lines and the damage stayed long after the applause ended. Which of these Golden Age guests crossed the line the worst? And who do you think Letterman never truly forgave? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if these stories surprised you, and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes Hollywood truths you were never supposed to hear.